Welcome to another episode of Engineering Legends. I'm Tiffany Long, here with Kelly Rogers. Everyone loves a good comeback story, and today's guests from Perpetua Resources will share an intriguing story about a historic mining site in Idaho dating back to World War II that is now being mined ethically while also being upgraded to today's environmental standards.
We are proposing the Stibnite Gold Project. It's a project that we've been working on since about 2010 in the historic Stibnite mining district, based on the vision that we can redevelop this abandoned mining site. And in doing so, produce both gold and the critical mineral antimony, also provide environmental uplift to this abandoned site and the environmental conditions that are there today.
You'll hear about the site's history and importance to the Second World War and the precious mineral antimony, what it is and why it's so valuable in modern times, and how this project supports a 100% made in America supply chain, reducing our dependence on China and Russia.
And our guest will also talk about the future of the site and their partnership with the small local town of Yellow Pine, Idaho, and how their current efforts will rectify problems created by the original mine site, including reconnecting a river to support salmon migration and rerouting a road prone to the risk of avalanches. So settle in and enjoy this true American comeback story. Let's get started with some introductions.
My name is Mackenzie Lynen, and I am the Vice President of External Affairs for Perpetua Resources. I have the pleasure of having now worked on this project since about 2011, so 10 years in the making. And one, it was something that I was attracted to work on because of their very early and proactive approach to community engagement and communications and restoration. And that was something that seemed very new at the time for the mining industry, and quite honestly, for a lot of industry, on how they were being proactive to engage with communities. And it's something that caught my attention and certainly has pulled me along ever since. So I am also an Idaho girl. I live here in Boise, Idaho. I've born and raised, and multiple generations of my family have been here. So it's also a project that it is in my backyard, and it's one that, I feel a lot of responsibility to make sure that it's done right. So that's me.
It always helps to have that personal connection. Thank you, Mackenzie. Dale?
Yes, my name is Dale Kerner. I am a geologist by training. I grew up in Wisconsin, and I did my undergraduate in Wisconsin, and then I moved to Idaho in 1996 to go to Boise State for graduate school. I'm really glad I moved to Idaho when I did. Absolutely loved it, and I've been here ever since. So I don't have as deep a roots as Mackenzie, but I absolutely love this state. I love the area, the topography, the geology, everything. So very happy to be here. And when I did get to Idaho and finished up with school, I became an environmental consultant for about 18 years, and I had a career doing that with many mining clients. So I've seen the spectrum of mining clients from very, very good to those who weren't so good. And one of the things that really impressed me about Midas Gold at the time, now Perpetua Resources, they were around, as Mackenzie noted. She was working for them since 2011, and I didn't join the team until 2017, but they were definitely on my radar as a consultant for, as a potential client. And it was rather unexpected when I got the call to join the team, but I sure am glad that they did reach out to me and bring me onto the team. Again, that was in July 2017. So it's almost 5 years that I've been here, but just looking at this project and the company, it was very clear, abundantly clear that they wanted to make sure that they were doing things in a very different way from a lot of the a lot of the people or a lot of the companies that are out there operating today, to really set the bar at a very high level, and have a project that would take an approach of, restoring a legacy site, a brownfield site, if you will, by leveraging the revenue coming out of the mining operation to do some really great things to a site that's had long impact. So my role at Perpetua Resources is I'm the permitting manager. Because we are in part on federal land, we are of course going through the NEPA process, which is an extended process. Maybe we'll get to that discussion point today. And I did engage with that with some of my other mining clients in Southeast Idaho, but it's a long process. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And in addition to our NEPA approval from the Forest Service, which is our lead agency, we've got a lot of other permits related to virtually every aspect of our operation. The most important ones being related to surface and groundwater quality, the quality of the air, the quality of the soil, our impacts to wetlands and the mitigation to compensate for those impacts, et cetera. There's just a lot of permits. So for a moment, I think it was 5 or 8 seconds, I thought that I might not have as an exciting a life working for a mining company as I did as a consultant, or not have the variety. But I was quickly proved wrong, and I'm extremely happy to have a very challenging but a rewarding job, and working with really a great team here at Perpetua Resources.
Fantastic. So could one of you tell us a little bit about Perpetua Resources? Like, who are you? What do you do? How long you've been in business?
I would be happy to. So Perpetua Resources is a US-based company headquartered here in Boise, Idaho. We are proposing the Stibnite Gold Project. It's a project that we've been working on since about 2010 in the historic Stibnite mining district. And we have created our plan for the Stibnite Gold Project based on the vision that we can redevelop this abandoned mining site. And in doing so, produce both gold and the critical mineral antimony, but like Dale mentioned, also provide environmental uplift to this abandoned site and the environmental conditions that are there today. While doing that, we can also help fuel the green or clean energy transition through providing the critical mineral antimony to the US market, and partner and bring value to our local communities. And it's a big vision, but in the last 10 years, we've been taking very concrete steps to bring it into reality. And if I were to, describe the 3 things that make this project and our approach unique, first is the fact that we are on this abandoned mine site, that we've identified an opportunity to go back to a brownfield, redevelop it, and in doing so, improve environmental conditions at site and bring that investment that's really desperately needed into site, where today environmental conditions and legacies that have been left behind include water quality that's been very heavily degraded by millions of tons of unlined legacy tailings left over from mining that occurred really over the last century by other parties. And then also the fact that today the East Fork of the South Fork of the Salmon River flows into an abandoned mining pit that has blocked salmon migration for well over 80 years. And our plan is designed to both improve water quality and reconnect fish migration, along with many other uplifts to the environmental conditions at site. And then secondly, antimony, we get to be the only US producer, which is essential both for our technology industries, for the clean energy transition as a component of long duration storage batteries.
Well, let's dig into antimony a little bit more. I'd like you to describe exactly what antimony is and why it's important.
Absolutely. I'll take the first part of this, and then I'll have Dale jump in a little bit too from his geology background. So
Sure.
Start, antimony is one of the listed 50 critical minerals because it is both essential to a large range of products that we rely on in this country. So everything from in the energy industry, we find antimony in wind turbines and solar panels and wiring in our homes and vehicles. In technology, antimony plays an essential role in products like semiconductors. And then on the national defense side, antimony is used in munitions and primers and other technologies that are required for our security, our national security. The problem is we don't have a domestically mined source in this country. Instead, 90% of the world's supply of this mineral that we rely on for so many things is controlled by China, Russia, and Tajikistan. So we find ourselves in a very vulnerable situation when it comes to our ability to access antimony. And then we also have these emerging needs for antimony as well. So not too long ago, we entered into a relationship with a US company called Ambri, and they've developed a liquid metal battery. It's a storage or energy storage battery that requires two things. It requires antimony and it requires calcium. And we would be proud to be able to provide antimony from the Stibnite Gold Project to help fuel this battery and really make it a fully domestic supply chain, lowering the kind of carbon footprint and helping to improve the access to ethically sourced metals for this emerging technology as well. So antimony, I like to say, is an unsung hero. Not very many people know about it, but we do rely on it for almost everything in our daily lives. At one point or at another in our lives every day, we use antimony. Dale, do you want to jump in on any kind of the components around kind of its elements or what makes antimony so unique at the Stibnite Gold Project?
Sure. Yeah, so Mackenzie mentioned that this would be our only domestic mined source of antimony. And, we have mined antimony here in the past, and antimony has been mined elsewhere in the U.S. in the past. But it's one thing to have it, and it's another thing to mine it and produce it, and to be able to refine it. So we also have limited capacity in the U.S. right now to refine antimony from the way that it occurs in nature. So let's talk a little bit about that. We've got a pretty unique deposit in that we do have a significant resource of antimony. And antimony is a metallic element. It's classified as a semi-metal because of its specific properties, but in its elemental form, it is a very shiny, metallic-looking substance. But it also very commonly occurs as a mineral combined with other elements, whether it's oxygen or sulfur or what have you, to form a variety of minerals. There's a lot of mineral forms of antimony, and a lot of them are very useful because they have these unique properties imparted to them by antimony. And because antimony is found so commonly in these other minerals, that speaks to the root of its name, which is based in two Greek words, anti, which is opposed or opposite, and monos, which is alone. So antimony does not like to be alone. It likes to combine with other elements to form a lot of different minerals, many of which are useful. I have to admit, before I joined, even though I'm a geologist, before I joined Midas Gold at the time and now Perpetua Resources, I was pretty ignorant of antimony myself. But being involved with this project, I've learned a lot about just how important it is. I'm a big fan of every year the USGS puts out the commodity summary about the various minerals and materials that we use in our country every year, and they describe where these are coming from, whether we're an exporter or importer of these materials. And antimony is one of those materials that we're very much dependent on imports for, and we use about 60 million pounds of it a year, and that amount is going up. It's not going down, because antimony is so useful and occurs in so many products, some of which Mackenzie mentioned. We do use a lot of it, and there's really no sign that we're going to start using less of it anytime soon. She mentioned its fire retardant properties. That's extremely important. You can incorporate antimony into a large number of materials to inhibit or to increase their fire retardance. And if you think about how important that could be for something like children's clothing, mattresses, furniture, certainly building materials and paint, it's important to have some level of fire retardance for those. And then if you think about the plastics surrounding wires, a lot of structural fires begin with shorts and wiring. So having some level of fire retardance around wiring is extremely important as well. So a lot of applications for fire retardants, and in fact, that's the largest application of antimony bearing products that we're using today. I think it's around 40% of the antimony bearing products.
How much antimony is at the site there in Idaho? Like, do you have a sense of how much there is?
Well, that's a really good question. And, there's a fairly large deposit there, in the ground. And again, being in the ground and being available to be mined economically are a couple of different things. I believe we've got over 200 million pounds of antimony, that we've identified in the ground. The overall ore body has a lot of antimony in it. I believe that our latest mine plan proposes to mine, Mackenzie, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it's a little over, is it 110 million pounds?
I think that's what we anticipate for recovery at this point. Yeah. 148 million pound resource.
Yeah. And, wow. That's the reason that number is lower than the actual number of what's in the ground is because you have to get this out of the ground economically, and those economics can change. So, if we've got a, resource in the ground of, X million pounds, the amount that can be mined economically can change over time if the price of antimony were to increase, by a certain percentage. And in fact, the price of antimony is going up. I think it's around 650 or 670 and change right now, whereas a few years ago it was a couple dollars less than that. So, not a huge cost for a pound of antimony, but if that increases dramatically, that could change the economics of our project. But there's also a lot of other factors involved with that I won't speak to here, but they do involve, of course, permitting and the impacts of our site, et cetera, and so on.
Right. But Dale, I think an interesting note to that is that, from what we can see, our resource of antimony is one of the largest economic resources in the world, not owned by the Chinese or their interests. So making it a fairly significant resource for our nation, that this really is an opportunity for us to shore up some of the vulnerabilities that we have at the moment with the resource.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys mentioned earlier that antimony is used in making batteries. What is the difference between batteries made with antimony versus other more conventional batteries?
That's a really good question. So battery storage and opportunities for transitioning our economy to lower carbon forms of energy requires battery storage. And so in order to bring these new forms of energy online, the president and Congress and many others across this country are really focused at the moment at this missing piece of the battery technology. Most of the battery technology that we hear about, that's been around for quite a while now, are the lithium-ion batteries. And those are very important, and they absolutely play a role in the overall transition of our energy economy. But I think it's really important as well to when we have a discussion around battery storage, that we also recognize that in order to address this decarbonization of our grids, we need all technologies, both because they will play different roles in different contexts or when there are different needs, because technology is changing a lot. And there are also different demands on the mineral resources to create these technologies. So a diversified approach is really important. And the battery that we're talking about for our antimony is a battery that is being developed by a company called Ambry, based out of Massachusetts. And they've developed what is called a liquid metal battery. And it's unique for a number of reasons. First, it only relies on a combination of calcium and antimony, and it's fairly low in its mineral need intensity. And so they don't compete with a lot of the other types of battery technologies for the minerals to be able to create and commercialize the battery. They're also designed to be fully recyclable. When we look out at kind of our need to manage resources, particularly under climate change environment, that's really important. These are batteries that are scalable up to about 2 gigawatt hours and are already about 30 to 50% lower cost than the lithium ion comparables in the 2021 market. Another thing that's really distinctive about this technology is that it doesn't have the same risk of thermal loss or combustion as some of the lithium ion systems. And we get a battery that's designed by and built by a US company and that can be manufactured right here at home. So when we talk about bringing this technology onto the grid, I think there's a strong path for commercialization. And about a year ago, we signed an agreement with Ambry to provide a portion of our antimony in order to develop their batteries. And based on that agreement, we would be able to produce on a daily, or to store, the batteries that we would help produce would store about 13 gigawatt hours on a daily cycle for the 20-year lifespan of these batteries. And to put that into context, that's enough to power with solar 1 million American homes for 20 years, just from the base level of antimony that we can provide into this battery system, which is very exciting for us to really see our vision for this site and to bring solutions that we can also help be a part of the solutions needed for climate change.
Yeah, it sounds like lower cost, longer life, safer, and made in the USA. It's like all bonus
all
stuff.
Good things, right?
Yeah.
All good things.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and it would be great if the antimony were mined in the USA too. That would complete the trifecta.
That's exactly right. The full supply chain right here, which is actually one of the reasons, when Ambry has spoken publicly about their desire to enter into a partnership with an American company, that was part of it. Having a responsibly sourced source of antimony plays into their consumer demand for the people who want to buy their batteries as well.
Do we know, is this the only site in the States that has antimony, or are there other possible sites for the future?
So Dale, go ahead.
There are other deposits of antimony in the United States. I mean, I don't know them specifically. I believe they're in Montana and Nevada and Alaska. But I don't think we've got a very good handle on just how much antimony is potentially in reserve in domestic deposits. If you, again, going back to the USGS commodity summary, I believe that the only reserves potentially accessible antimony indicated are from the Stibnite project. So it, not only is it will it be the only domestic mine source, but other significant reserves of antimony have yet to be identified. But I think we've got a pretty good idea of where they might occur, and it would just be a matter of kind of getting that impetus moving forward to identify these deposits and characterize them and potentially get them into the permitting process. But there are other deposits out there, but it's not an overly common mineral to have occurring in your deposit.
And the other aspect to that too, Dale, is that it's not always feasible to then mine it. Mining and getting a project started is a very expensive process, and most often with antimony, unless you have gold or an economic lead deposit with it, it is not feasible then to produce the antimony by itself. And so in our case, the economics of this project are very much built on the gold resource we have at hand. And yet it's that gold, the economics of our gold, that allows it to be feasible to produce antimony and to restore the site.
That's a really good point, Mackenzie. Because you think about the antimony at $6 or even $7 a pound, and 100 million pounds of that, $700 million. That barely puts a dent in the cost that it takes to develop a mine and permit a mine, let alone conduct the reclamation that would be needed to appropriately reclaim and restore a mine, particularly one where you've got existing disturbances and environmental issues already. So it's very important to the economics of the project that it co-occurs with gold and silver.
Now, I understand that, I guess, the White House recently released a supply chain report that talked about antimony. Can you share what was in that report about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this administration has been paying a lot of attention to supply chain matters, both for the critical goods that we all recognize might not be as easy for us to have on the grocery store shelves as they were a couple of years ago, but critical minerals in particular as the building blocks for all of these things that we want and we need. I like to say that critical minerals are the first link in the supply chain. And when we don't have access or control over the production of those minerals, our supply chains are neither secure nor are they necessarily responsible. And so it's been great to see this administration paying attention and now starting to take action. So a year ago, the president signed an executive order for the agencies within the federal government to review our supply chain vulnerabilities and potential solutions. And as a part of that executive order, a report came out just a few months ago or a few weeks ago that reported back on what the agencies had learned. And antimony specifically was called out as a shortfall mineral by the Department of Defense. So a mineral that we need, and yet we don't know where or how we're going to meet that need. Our country does have a stockpile of antimony, but there's not certainty that that stockpile will be able to be refreshed after the Department of Defense takes what it needs from it. So there's growing awareness and interest in it, particularly now as kind of the geopolitical world is more unsettled in the last month or so with and Russia in particular, and what that might mean for where things move politically and in the geopolitical realm, and how that impacts our ability to access minerals. We're already seeing it, nickel, for example, and uranium, and potentially even things like neon being impacted by the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and trying to figure out where China's going to play in that. All goes into our antimony resources and what we have access to here.
With it being classified as like what you called it, a shortfall mineral, does that do anything or give it like special priority, or is it just what they call it?
The report didn't go that far. Or at this point, it's just what they call it. But
okay.
Right? We saw the president take another action, which was to initiate the Defense Production Act, which is an act that really came right around the Korean War, when as a nation, we realized we didn't have the things that we needed for our national security. So last week or 2 weeks ago, the president activated the Defense Production Act, or authorized the Department of Defense to go and identify projects where there was a need based on connection to storage batteries and EV batteries. So we're seeing it really start on the clean energy side, on how clean energy policy requires access to these critical materials, and where the Department of Defense, through the Defense Production Act, can utilize some of the resources of that act to then encourage and help promote access and development of critical mineral projects here in this country. So that will include things like additional coordination between agencies. It includes help on access to resources or even some funding possibilities down the road. If the Department of Defense identifies a roadblock, then they can come in and help with that process. So it's encouraging to finally see real action being taken. We just don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet, but now there's at least a path being carved.
Can I add some to that?
Yeah,
Mackenzie. And also you asked earlier about where these antimony deposits might occur within the United States. Another part of this whole process of getting this supply chain reinvigorated in this country for critical minerals specifically. There's a critical minerals mapping initiative. Just to get a little plug in here for the geologists. Before we can even design these mines or figure out how we're going to get stuff out of the ground or where it's going to go to be refined, we have to identify where these deposits are. And there are robust geologic mapping programs in all states, to kind of refresh all the geologic mapping data that occur in those states and kind of bring them into the new digital age, get all these maps digitized, be able to provide them online. But as part of those state map programs, the Critical Minerals Mapping Initiative helps fund those programs so we can, very simply identify where these resources might occur. So that's looking at the types of rocks that occur at the surface, the major structural features that occur, folds, faults, etc. We've got plenty of those out here in the West, but that's really where it all starts is identifying where those minerals might occur before we can even get them into this extremely long process of developing a mine plan, getting everything permitted, building mines and having refinement capacity in the United States. It takes a long time. Therefore the sooner we do it, the better. So it's good to see these initiatives getting off the ground and recognizing that if we are going to have mineral independence, we've got to start putting our money where our mouths are.
Did you say that was a federal initiative? The mapping initiative?
It is a federal initiative, and those are federal funding dollars. But each state has its own state map, and I say state map because it's an all caps acronym. They have boards to develop geologic mapping initiatives within their own states. So Idaho, I'm on the Idaho Geologic Mapping Advisory Committee, and each year the Idaho Geological Survey puts a grant proposal in to get federal dollars, which are matched by state dollars, to fund their geologic mapping projects. So Idaho's got, I think we've got 4 focus areas scattered around the state, and these things or these initiatives focus on, public health and safety with regard to geohazards and, potential transportation and transportation corridors. They focus on, economic opportunities, certainly, mineral resource development. But they're, the gas plays in Southwest Idaho are a recent focus area. Certainly Southeast Idaho with the phosphate district is another focus area. But just to kind of bring that all together, these mapping initiatives are aimed at building that base of knowledge of where do these minerals occur before they get into that very long conveyor belt of development that finally ends at us being able to have that mineral independence that appears is going to be increasingly critical as we move forward with the instability in the world. But
it certainly sounds like it.
Yeah.
Dale, I love that point though about the timeline. So if I may, for just a moment, We started this process as a company back in, basically in 2010 to identify and shore up, was there a resource, a mineral resource left at Stibnite? And we spent about 6 years evaluating, doing initial engineering, talking to our communities and developing that plan. So we invested 6 years into that first phase. And then we submitted our plan into the permitting process through NEPA in 2016. So we've been in the permitting review now for about 6 years. And we anticipate that should everything stay on track, we'll have a record of decision in 2023, then enter into about 3 years of construction. That puts production of gold and antimony in 2027. So a 17-year process.
Wow.
Identifying where those critical minerals are to getting them into production. So when we talk about timelines around action needed for climate change, or needed for supply chains, or needed for our Department of Defense and our national security, that's a very long outlook to be planning for.
It really is. Wow.
It's somewhat mind-boggling.
It is. It is.
Even talk about how much money it's cost.
Well, speaking of timelines, going back quite a bit, we understand there's a long history around this site in antimony. Can you share how the site became a critical player in World War II?
Absolutely. I'm a history major, and so perhaps that's why I love this portion of our story so much. But also, from being a lifelong Idahoan. So mining first started at Stibnite, Idaho, and Stibnite is in central Idaho, in the mountains of Idaho, very remote. So I'm here in Boise, and so it's about a 4-hour drive today to get to Stibnite from where I am. So mining first started here back in 1899 as a part of the Thunder Mountain Gold Rush, or the much larger gold rush happening across the West, and very much here in Idaho as well. So mining started for gold and silver. And it wasn't until the eve of World War II, when the US government saw that war could be coming and knew that we needed a supply of both tungsten and antimony, because it was the blockade in the Pacific and the Japanese invasion of China that blocked us from having access to the tungsten and antimony that we needed. And so the government set out and found both at Stibnite, Idaho, and went on to then commission the mining companies that were there to produce the tungsten and antimony for the war effort. And tungsten and antimony were both critical. As Dale has mentioned, antimony plays a role in our munitions, in bullets, and other types of materials used by the Department of Defense. And then tungsten is a metal strengthener. So it is what was making the German army so strong with their tanks and munitions as well. So it was critical to have a supply of both tungsten and antimony. And literally almost overnight, the town of Stibnite grew to about 1,000 people, and entire families moved to Stibnite to be a part of the war production. You could even serve your military duty at Stibnite. It was that critical to our national goals. And Stibnite went on to produce the majority of both tungsten and antimony used by the United States for World War II and the Korean War. And in fact, afterwards, in the 1950s, the US government went on to recognize the men and women of Stibnite, Idaho, for having shortened World War II by a year and saving 1 million American lives because of it, because of antimony and tungsten being that significant to the war effort. And so it has this incredible legacy that as an Idaho person, I didn't know about. And it's something that we should absolutely be proud of. And on the other hand, there's this other side of the legacy as well, right? Where a good chunk of the mining that has occurred at this site occurred long before there were environmental regulations on how to mine and how to leave it when you're done, and even an ethos around mining was different back then. And so because of it, there are also these environmental legacies left behind. And I love our approach as a company and for our project that we can go back, remine, once again, produce these things that are critical for our country, and this time close the chapter by truly restoring Stibnite and the environmental conditions that were left behind and taking on that legacy ourselves. To a certain degree, this story is so relevant today because it also shows us that supply chain issues are not new. We've been dealing with these supply chain issues for generations, and here they are again. And what a wonderful way to help rewrite the history of Stibnite.
This legacy is just amazing. And I'm going to change course a little bit. And I want to talk a bit about the future. Let's talk about the impact of what you guys are doing is going to have on like Idaho and that local community right there. What does the future hold for that actual site and that town right there?
To begin with, we have spoken with community members for over a decade now. Getting their take on the project. Involving them in the really the day-to-day operations that we have going on right now out there, just to kind of maintain the site. So we really have a good relationship with the people that live in Yellow Pine and other surrounding communities. And we're very open and honest with them about what we are proposing. The potential benefits of the project, both to the socioeconomic profile of Valley County and certainly their community right there, but also the overall environmental benefits, excuse me, that are going to result from the project. So I think that transparency has really paid off because as I said, we really have strong support from the surrounding communities, and everybody's very interested in supporting our project. When we get public comment periods, we usually have a long line of people waiting to sing the praises of the project. And when the project, Mackenzie mentioned the construction of the project. It's going to be a 3-year process. It's going to be a huge effort to build a modern mine out in that very remote part of Idaho. It's going to take 3 years. That's going to require us to build in part a new road. We'll utilize existing roads to the degree that we can, but it's going to employ about 1,000 people just to build the mine. So of course, some of these people will be coming in from specialty firms elsewhere, but we've demonstrated to date, and we certainly want to, moving forward, hire as many local people as possible. I'm understanding that may sometimes require training, specific training for health and safety or for other trades, but we definitely want to do that. And that's something we've really backed up with our actions to date. So that's going to be a large workforce building the mine. Once the mine is operating, the day-to-day operations, which will last for about 15 years, will employ about 500 people that are actually working at the mine in shifts of 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. 250 people at a time. So that's a significant workforce, and these will be well-paying jobs that are going to really change the economics of Valley County, and they're going to be putting a lot of money in people's pockets, as well as tax revenues in the state's pockets. So again, we want to hire people that come from this area, train them as needed to work at the mine, and as they did back in the 40s and 50s, take pride in developing a very important natural resource that's in their backyard, and having a hand in restoring this area that many people have known for decades as that mine pit up up at Stibnite, that you drive by, and you've been seeing it for decades. And yeah, there's some big old bull trout in there, but we can do better, and we can restore that that river to its former glory, not only as a fishery, but an anadromous fishery that that is once again passing anadromous fish back up into the upper portion of the East Fork, South Fork. So a lot of socioeconomic benefits that will come out of this project. I think we've communicated those very effectively to people, and backed up that talk with things we've been doing to date, and we want those people working at our mine.
That's right, Dale. And I think, I appreciate the question of, what does the future hold for Stibnite? Because what we know right now, that without the Stibnite Gold Project, Stibnite, Idaho stays the same, which means 10.5 million tons of legacy waste and tailings will continue to sit there unlined, degrading ground and surface water. We know that, just like Dale mentioned, anadromous fish will be blocked from what is miles of original habitat that they haven't been able to access directly through their own volition for over. And we'll just have overall degraded conditions and a river that's still flowing into an abandoned mining pit. That's what is there today, and that's what will stay, unless it's a project like the Stibnite Gold Project that provides private investment along with, massive amounts of government approvals and then continued oversight during the operations. But right in the very beginning of operations, our plan is to address those legacies. As soon as the construction period starts, we are starting to address the environmental legacies that have been left behind at Stibnite. And then, not waiting until the end of the project to do reclamation and restoration. So we've designed it so that our reclamation and restoration of our own disturbance is concurrent with mining. We're not waiting till the end of the project to see those benefits come to fruition, whether it is from improved water quality or fish access. All of those things start early on throughout the project. So, like Dale mentioned, in addition to the social partnerships and the economic benefits that can be shared with the local community, we also very immediately see benefits brought to Stibnite because of the mine.
I love that you're creating a healthier space. So what is it like working with the community of Yellow Pine?
That's a great question. So to give everyone a little bit of context, the community of Yellow Pine, the village of Yellow Pine, has, I think, about 20 full-time residents. It's fairly remote. And it's a community that was built and grew up alongside many of the historical mining operations that have occurred at Stibnite. So you have many people who live there today who had grandmothers and grandfathers and mothers and fathers who, or even themselves at one point or the other, have seen a different generation of mining occur from Stibnite. So the town of Yellow Pine is about 14 miles, but down a long dirt road to the Stibnite mine site. And one of the things that I think we would say that we have both appreciated and learned a lot from in the last 10 years is that it is a very frank and earnest community. They tell you exactly what they think without any sugarcoating. But because of that, it's really forced us to act very, very early on to listen. What do they need? What do they want? What are they concerned about? And then figure out a way to work with the community to address those needs and those concerns. There are two really great examples of this. The first, in the very first years of us putting our thoughts together about what a plan would look like to operate at Stibnite, the current road to get to Stibnite means that you travel along one of two very sensitive fisheries or rivers in Idaho, either the South Fork or Johnson Creek, and you parallel those for miles. And then you take the Stibnite road from Yellow Pine to Stibnite that is steep and narrow and prone to avalanche and slide. And we saw this and we're like, wow, it sure would be great if we had a different option here. And we were talking to the people of Yellow Pine and they were like, well, there totally is another option. There are these old logging roads and old mining roads that would take you into Stibnite from the different direction, and you'd be able to avoid recreational traffic. You'd be able to avoid paralleling those sensitive fisheries, and you'd get much higher up into the drainage where you're really reducing the risk to travel from avalanche, et cetera. And it actually has become our preferred solution to get to site. And we only figured that out because we started this dialogue early and we were open to those ideas. And so we've absolutely benefited. Another example, once our plan finally came out, we initially had it that the mine site was closed and unintentionally then had blocked some recreational traffic that's typical of going through Yellow Pine to access the backcountry. We didn't realize it. And so, we did about a 9-month process of working with the community to identify some solutions. And, both articulate our interests and our needs for a safe environment, for being able to control the environment, and from a cost and feasibility standpoint. And they came at it from an economic standpoint. And we were able to find some middle ground and find a solution forward. So it's been great. It's also, anytime you're 4 miles from, or not 4 miles, anytime you're, 4 hours from a major city, there are logistical, considerations of working out in the Idaho backcountry. Like, I'm not going to deliver next day. That extra planning and support then we get from the town, the folks in the town of Yellow Pine as well.
So probably no drive-throughs for lunch.
Yeah, no drive-throughs. There are 2 bars and 2 restaurants and a little grocery store that just finally reopened. So there's more and more.
It sounds really charming and beautiful.
Well, I'm really excited about what your team is doing. The patience you guys have over this 17 years you said so far is
it'll be a
amazing.
Total of 17 years. Yeah.
And it's exciting the impact that you're having both on resources for the US, but also for this community that's going to really benefit. So I appreciate you guys sharing your story today.
Yeah, this has been very interesting.
We certainly appreciate the opportunity. As you can probably tell from Dale and myself, we have no shortage of enthusiasm for talking about this project with folks. So we really appreciate it.
A huge thank you to Mackenzie and Dale for taking the time to speak with us today about this super exciting project. It's obvious that beyond being just a job site, this project and the local community are personally important to Perpetua Resources, and the products made using antimony are useful and very important to the future.
I know, this story makes me want to take a trip to northern Idaho for a visit. I can just picture the natural beauty, and I learned so much from this conversation. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
We know that many of our listeners out there have their own engineering legend stories. We'd love to hear from you. Please send us your feedback, stories, and ideas for future episodes. You can reach us at info@brwncald.com. This podcast was brought to you by Brown & Caldwell. It's our purpose and passion to safeguard water, maintain infrastructure, and restore habitats to keep our communities thriving. Until next time.